So I am here, and this is going to be a little bit different than normal. So yesterday I actually pre-taped a live segment with Vegabomber. He actually visited me. We went to go see Lego Batman, and so I was able to, well, create kind of a cool deal where we filmed what I would normally was going to do on the show, except I did it with an actual person with me. So I'm actually watching right here live with you. I'm in the chat board, but I'm going to play the video from yesterday, so good fun times. I'm going to cut in a couple times. I'll explain a little bit in the video. I don't know if this is going to work. This is all an experiment. So yeah, let's see how this goes. Thank you guys so much for watching, and let's begin. Hey, Sean Chandler here, and this is Sean Chandler Talks About Live, but today it's not just Sean Chandler. I am joined by a very special guest who actually is here in Austin with me. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
That's right, I'm the Vegabomber coming from Dallas, so here we are, and I'm loving it.
So where can we find you on YouTubes? You
can find me on YouTube under the same name, Vegabomber, also on Facebook, Vegabomber, and also on Twitter, Facebook.
So, since he's here today, this is actually Saturday, so this is pre-taped. What I wanted to do, I'm still watching the chat board so you can interact back with me, and I'm going to cut in later on. But for right now, what I wanted to do is have an opportunity to talk with someone in person, because I don't want to just talk about movies. I want to talk about movies with you today.
That's right.
And just talk about, first off, the state of the movies and just kind of the trends that we're seeing and the odd things that we like, don't like, all of that fun stuff. And then the state of movie fans.
Is bringing up the level of CGI, which things look more palatable now than what they did before. Like when you see Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, you're kind of like, ooh, in some places. But
oh,
now,
yeah. I actually showed my kids a clip from it, Spider-Man 3, just 2 days ago, and was like, holy cow, this looks bad.
Yeah, so it's like, that's exactly right. And it's like the film, so I guess the film industry has done well with that, and that's what we would want to see. Then I guess some of the negatives or frustrating things is that now the idea of storytelling has kind of slipped off. Now it's kind of like we want to just use the visuals to tell the stories because they can be so awesome, but we're forgetting characterization, and we're just doing stuff where it's just running from plot line to plot line rather than just, hey, let's develop these characters, let's get people to invest in them, and then let's go on that journey with them. And so we're kind of trading that in for just explosions and too much CGI to tell the story, which I think there's nothing wrong with CGI in and of itself, but when it's replacing storytelling methods, I think that could be a problem.
Yeah, and somewhat because it's a movie industry, rightfully, they want to do things that make money. And if we don't go see certain movies, then they're not going to keep making movies like that. Or if certain movies make an enormous amount of money, they're going to keep making movies more like that. Yes. But then when you just feel so much the business side of it driving creative decisions.
Yes.
In the way that everybody, because the MCU is so successful, you start hearing rumors about like the Universal Monsters, you shared universe, and you go, that's a dumb idea. Yeah. You would never naturally gravitate towards like, what if like there's this big epic cinematic universe with the Wolfman and Dracula and the Mummy? Wouldn't that be awesome? I mean, it's schlocky good if they were like, they were making them for like $15 million. Yeah. And then they all like came together to be like, oh, that's cool. As a blockbuster, like, hey, let's make billions of dollars off this. I go, oh, that's just weird.
Yes. I mean, because you can't think about it. Any time before in cinematic history, most of the times when you went and saw movies, you didn't think about cash grab or I can tell the only reason why they're making this. And now as you go into a movie, you can almost smell cash grab when the opening credits are going on some of these movies, the way they've set it up. And so then there's the idea of the trailers, where the trailers give away the whole dang movie before you go see it. And you know major plot points, and it's like, stop doing that in movie houses.
And that they do that as it's a business decision. Like, we need to make sure that people come to our movie, so we want to make sure we give them everything that might get them to come to the movie. Therefore, we're going to put things in the trailer that you should not put in the trailer.
Right.
For the cinema, like you are depriving people of the director's intended cinematic experience as a way of promoting it. Instead of being clever with promotion, it's just, let's put Doomsday in the trailer.
Yes.
Let's put the gag from when Wonder Woman shows up in the trailer.
Yes.
And you're going, that's so deep into the third act. Like, those are... that if there's something in this movie that you don't want to show...
Yeah.
Like, you could even show... Like, cut the trailer in a way that you've got Doomsday in it, and you'd be like, okay, there's a monster in the movie somewhere. But if you cut it as... You've shown Batman and Superman fighting, and you've built everything all about that, and then you end the trailer with... Then Doomsday shows up, and then you see Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman coming together... Oh, you've given away your third act.
Yes.
Like, you gave away the one thing that you hold off on.
Yes.
But they did that because it's, well, maybe we can get a few more people to show up.
Yeah.
Who is the person that wasn't going to come to Batman v Superman until they went, oh, man, is she with you?
Right.
Like, that joke got me.
She was with you.
Like, I'm going to go see the movie now because he said that. Like, who's that person? But they're just trying to, like, find every gimmick to get you to show up. And you could market Batman v Superman without showing Wonder Woman or Doomsday at all.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And you could show Diana Prince. Yeah. And so, that's cool.
Yes.
There's not one extra person that shows up.
I agree.
Maybe I don't know, who's this Wonder Woman fan?
Yeah.
That's like, oh, I love Wonder Woman, but they didn't show her in the trailer.
So I'm not going to go.
Yeah, that's not it. That person doesn't exist.
Yeah, and so before you jump on my boy Sean here and say, so you're just a Marvel fanboy saying that sort of stuff, I'll balance that and just say it this way. Age of Ultron. I knew everything that was going to happen in that movie because the trailers gave away everything. And there was another thing that wasn't great about that trailer on that was that they first marketed Ultron like he was really dark.
Yeah.
Then when you saw the movie, he's laughing, joking, cutting up, doing all this and all that. And I'm like, wait a minute. The real Ultron and the way you were portraying him early on in the first couple of trailers, he was sinister. And you were like, oh man, how are the Avengers going to beat him? And then by the time you get to the movie, he's cracking jokes, he's doing stuff, and I get it. He's supposed to be Iron Man's AI, so somehow he gets some of his personality. But still, Age of Ultron had a chance to do something. Of course, it was coming after the first Avengers, so it had a lot to live up to. But you went for the easy parts. You went for the stuff that you thought, oh, this will make everybody. And you have, Thor takes off for a while, then comes back. I mean, just stuff that was happening in the movie that you were kind of going... You could tell this was reshot or redone or recut or there was some studio interference going on because that movie wasn't even... It didn't seem cohesive at points. Right. And really you're kind of going, okay, we didn't learn anything new except for the fact that Black Widow, for some reason, is interested in the Hulk, even though in the first Avengers he swatted the crap out of her, and she had PSD for a little bit, and then somehow they got together. Okay. So it was a mess.
Yeah. And but like you said, like both in the marketing of it, they went, oh, people like it when the sequels are darker, so let's market this as like this dark, brooding sequel with like Ultron. He's going to really be this threat that's going to be menacing. And so then, but that's not really how the movie plays out at all. Yeah. And then likewise, you're watching the movie and it feels like we got to build our franchises. We got to set up this thing. We got to set up. And so you just feel getting stuff in. And you watch the interviews and the way Joss Whedon reacted after the movie came out. And it's like, yeah, he had like 20 minutes of studio mandated scenes that had to be put in the movie. And if you pulled those out of it and you let it be kind of the darker tone that they marketed, the movie is significantly better in quality.
Easily.
And you can see how there's a better movie there that we didn't get because they were trying to make this broad appeal product that also advertises their other movie products in the future. And therefore, this one suffers for the sake of all these other things. But
absolutely,
generally speaking, I don't know that Marvel has been... that they've done a pretty good job of not doing that. Yeah. They've had a couple of missteps in doing that, but for most movies, they tell their single story and put little nuggets for the future. Yes. But especially this last year, done a really bad job with this franchise building and moving to the future seems like doing let's counterbalance our back and forth. Whether are we Marvel guys or DC guys? The DCEU has been horrible about franchise building.
Yeah, I mean, all you have to do is watch Green Lantern, and I know there's some people that will actually defend Green Lantern. I think this is because they like my man that's the lead actor, Ryan Reynolds. I don't know why I was forgetting that for a moment. But it's almost like retroactively they're loving that film because he was so good in Deadpool that now I've seen people defending Green Lantern. But no, in a world where good superhero movies exist, especially talking to you, Warner Brothers, there's templates out there for you to see how to do a good superhero movie. For you to continue to keep pumping these out makes no sense to me.
Like, so people pick on, for good reason, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, the Joel Schumacher ones from the 90s. For good reason, people pick on them. But if you go back to the year 1995, 1998, when these movies are coming out, there was not the templates that there are today. So they were still kind of discovering that. I mean, prior to those movies coming out, you had the Richard Donner Superman movies, and you had Tim Burton's Batman movies, and not much else. You had some like straight-to-video Marvel movies. There's no templates. And so then they're just like, let's try campy. Where it's like juvenile humor, but nipples on the suits. You know.
The bat nips.
For don't know what audience. And then, but we're not there anymore. Right now.
Yes.
And when Green Lantern came out, you had 20 good to awesome superhero movies that you could look at and go, which template are we going for? Like, which story structure, which tone that you could look at and go, all right, now what's our unique spin on it? But there's no excuse for things like that.
No, and another one that's horrible to me is the Fantastic Four franchise. I hate the idea that they're just playing keep away with it. They're like, no, we got to keep at least one, we got to keep one comic book franchise. And even though we're not going to do it well or put any time into it, I mean, I think that's the only superhero trilogy that none of them are good. Usually there's at least one good one in there.
4 of them. You're forgetting the Roger Corman film from the 90s.
Yeah, for a good reason maybe. But I mean, where would you see that anywhere else? Who else says, let's keep making this movie, but because it's a property and they're playing keep away from someone else, now that gets to be made so that you can hold on to it contractually?
For the rights, And
it's like, wait a minute, I thought this was about movies and telling good stories, and now it's you use a property just so you can play keep away from them. That's...
Yeah, that one's almost painful to look at because of how bad the movies are and how bad they've been for different reasons.
Yes.
And like the one that was made in the 90s, it is documented that it was made to keep the rights.
Yeah.
And they didn't tell the cast and the crew. There's actually a documentary about it. I haven't seen it, called Doomed.
Wow.
And it talks about how... It talks about how the actors were like, we just thought we were making a movie that was low budget. We didn't know that we were making a movie that was never going to get released. And you hear that like, oh, this says everything you need to know, affirming every fear you have about how fickle, money-grubbing, superficial, shallow, manipulative, how much of a business the movie business is.
Yes.
And when it starts to hit at things that there are people out there that love these characters, and then it's being made by businessmen.
Yes. And then when you hear this interference, and we were talking about what's hurting movies, when you hear the interference, you hire this guy because he's an artist, the director.
Yeah.
You hire him because he's got a unique vision of what he wants to happen.
Josh
in the
Trank
film.
on the
Yes,
Fantastic
Josh Trank. And then you just step in and you cut his legs out from underneath him and tell him, no, it's got to look like this and have these few things in it. And you're almost like, well, why didn't you make that movie if that was the case?
Right.
You could have saved yourself some money than hiring a director to do this. And so then he gets in there, and then that sets up bad blood because nobody wants to have their name to this stuff, but it's already too late because you're all in all the marketing stuff. So he has to come out and try to defend because he knows it's horrible. And he's trying to figure out, how can I say this? I don't have a choice. I guess I'm just going to burn some bridges. Hey, guys, blank, blank, and blank. This is not me. I did not want to do this. This is what we had. And then he gets blackballed. But in a way, you ask, yeah, but could this have been avoided? Yes. Could you have just let him have his vision and just do it? And see, Marvel did the same thing to Wright, right? On Ant-Man, right? They told Wright, no, this doesn't quite fit into our universe the way we want to. So he gets let go, and they bring someone else in to do Ant-Man so that it would just fit into the universe that they were already creating.
Right.
And it's just kind of like, but Wright would have done such an interesting take on that. That's what we need to see. We don't need all the movies to look and smell like the last one.
Right.
We need to have a little difference in it.
Well, and that's where, even contrasting those two of how one of them, you could say, did Marvel do the right thing? It goes both ways.
Yeah.
They made a better movie for the franchise at the expense of a better movie.
Yeah.
Whereas with Fantastic Four, they made similar types of decisions. They're like, we're just going to fiddle with it a little bit. But they did it so late in the game that all they did was they screwed everybody.
Yeah.
Because the movie, it's... So I just finally watched it just a few months ago. It's bizarre. It's like you're watching...
Fantastic?
Yeah, Fantastic. It's like you're watching such a unique train wreck of a movie where they go to make it and they change directions and you just see it on screen. Like you're watching it and the first 45 minutes you'll be like, it's a bit slow. This isn't great, but it's very consistently toned and well directed. And it's this very dark kind of brooding sort of thing. Probably doesn't fit Fantastic Four, but are establishing themes. And then as soon as they get their powers, it's like you jump over to this different movie. And as soon as you're like, oh, is this where the movie's going? Then the movie's over.
Wow. Tale of Two Halves, huh?
Yeah, and you just... Have you seen it?
I haven't. I stayed away from it. Maybe I need to see it on VOD.
I'm like legitimately like you'll watch it because you'll hear so many terrible things about it and how and you watch the first 45 minutes before they get their powers and you're like, all right, why is it taking so long for them to get their powers? But and it establishes a whole bunch of themes really well and it's well directed, well acted, a little bit dull, but interesting, quirky, dark dull.
Okay.
They get their powers, and then in the middle act's like 10 minutes long, and then stuff happens, and Doom shows up, and the movie's done 10 minutes later. I mean, the movie's like 90 minutes long. It's really short, and it's over 50. It's like 50% first act, and then the second act is just really short, and
that sounds painful.
And you're like seeing where they're like where they're going with it, and then there's like a time jump in the movie, and then it goes like 1 year later. And they set things up in the middle act, like Reed Richards disappears, and it says 1 year later, and the next scene 1 year later is Reed Richards coming back. And then he comes back, and it's the final battle, and then the movie's over. And like I was watching it, I get an hour into the movie, like, okay, I can see where this is getting, it's kind of falling apart a little bit. Right. I mean, it's not quite as strong. That first hour was really good, though. And then I realized, wait, there's like 15 minutes left in the movie. And it's watching it, and you can see wigs changing in the last,
wigs
where they're wearing wigs clearly because it was reshoots, and then you can go watch the features about the making of it.
That's a hot mess.
And you see like scenes that aren't in the movie. The trailers have like big action sequences, and one of the problems with the movie is that there's no action in it. And you see it. There's like the scene with the thing with the army doing not in the movie, and it's just bizarre. And then you read interviews about what happened with Josh Trank is right before they went to go shoot the movie. They told him, you got to cut these 2 action sequences out of it.
Yeah.
And so then he's like, how's my movie going to work? And so then the movie he makes doesn't match what they want. So they start kicking him out of it. And then you see the movie they released and they cut action sequences. It's this bizarre train wreck of watching studio heads interfering with the movie, interfering with the vision. And the final product is a bizarre mess of a movie.
See, and I don't get that, and it's amazing to me that you hired people to come in and do a job, and then you kind of micromanage the crap out of it, and so you can't get a consistent movie with that. And I noticed another thing too with films in terms of the state of films right now is we can't do 2 things. We can't write a good villain, and we don't seem to know how to wrap up the third act in movies anymore. It seems that when you watch these movies nowadays, they're going to set up the main characters, they're going to show you the problem, and then all of a sudden in that third act, hey, let's just blitzkrieg with everything that we could possibly have happen.
Fantastic Four has a Skybeam.
Oh, yes. Fantastic Four has it. Suicide Squad has it. Apocalypse just said, let's just create dirt devils flying everywhere. I mean, and it's all of a sudden, it's like they just said, hey, you know what we need to do? We just need to have everything just go bad all at once on the screen, and then somehow...
in CGI chaos.
That'll do it.
And they think that that's what we like. We need to have spectacle and just...
Yeah, and it's crazy because you spend the first 2 acts building these characters.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, you go into the third act, and that's what I thought about Apocalypse. When I watched Apocalypse, I was like, ooh, they didn't know how to end this movie. They didn't know. And Apocalypse is supposed to be big, and you have this short actor playing Apocalypse. You know, and I love him.
And there's scenes in the movie where, like, he's walking around, and, like, he's the same height as that lady. Like,
it's like, what? And let me say, you have to pick...
Or they have tall women, so some of the... Like, Olivia Munn, I think, is, like, actually tall, so she's taller than him.
Yeah, and I'm like... And I get and so you're trying to pick the 4 horsemen, but the mutants that you picked, the only one you really need was Magneto. if you're so powerful, the other ones I didn't think were powerful enough to have as your four horsemen, but we'll just let that skirt underneath for a little bit. And so you just see these choices and you go, why? Why did you go there? And I think Suicide Squad is guilty of the same thing. And the third act, again, is weak. So you got weak third acts and weak villains showing up in films, and it's a trend that I don't like.
Yeah, and somewhat to what you said before, it just goes back to Hollywood thinking that people just want to see CGI money on the screen. And so then we have to blow up buildings, and the world, they don't know how to write good villains, and they don't know how to write good stakes anymore.
Right.
And so then the easy way to give a movie stakes is to say, he's going to blow up a city. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, if you're going to blow up a city, we've got stakes. But they haven't built up all these characters that you care about, a motivation for the villain to have emotional investment in why they're trying to do something. It's we're going to blow up this city. We're going to pull all the metal from the world and pull it in, whatever Magneto was doing there. Yeah. And it's just say something really big as opposed to saying something really good.
Correct.
And sometimes when you do, so I watched Die Hard back in December in the theater.
The first one?
The first Die Hard. And so sitting there, and after I started doing this, my channel, and so reviewing stuff, and so watching this movie analytically in a theater, so no distractions, or I'm not on my phone or anything like it is a lot of times when you rewatch some of your favorite movies at home.
Yeah.
I'm just in a theater watching this great movie, and the end has a big explosion, but it has one big explosion.
Yeah.
And then the final moment of the showdown, it's him and Hans Gruber in a room, and it's Old West cowboy, can I shoot you first type stuff. There's the big final fight is him with one other guy. This is very easily, arguably, the best action movie of all time. By all accounts, one of the best action movies of all time. Yeah. And it doesn't need big CGI messes because they establish themes early on and stakes early on. And so then when you move into the third act, you have some spectacle in it. It doesn't need 20 minutes of spectacle and explosions, because all you need to know is that if his wife dies, then we've lost. Yes. So we've got to save his wife. We've got to get these people off this roof.
Yes. Yeah,
and our guy trying to do all of this, his feet are bleeding, and little things that... Even throughout the movie, the little things that they set up early on, everything matters.
And the criminals were good.
The bad
guys were good.
And you understand why they're doing what they're doing. And while you don't have to have this elaborate revenge backstory, it's they're greedy thieves.
Yeah.
And they're manipulative, and they're trying to get their stuff done. They don't mind killing people, but they're not looking to kill people.
Right.
They just don't care if they do, as long as they get their millions.
That's right.
And that's just what you don't see in Hollywood very often. And that's kind of what made... So I saw John Wick a couple days ago, and John Wick 2, and it's just a good old-fashioned action movie that knows how to build towards a third act.
Okay.
Where there's villains in it that you're interested in, you understand why they're doing what they're doing. There's stakes, but it's not like they went... Let's have a bunch of CGI explosions. It's just good old-fashioned action.
Yeah.
And the stakes are, can he make it through this? Can he survive? Can he accomplish a simple goal? And because you care about him, because you understand why the villains are doing what they're doing, and there's the other characters you care about.
Yes.
Good old-fashioned guy with a gun and punching people in the face.
Yeah.
Works.
It does work. Go back to it. It's Tom Cruise in The Last Samurai.
Yes.
That's an incredible film. And see,
a better version of Avatar.
Yeah,
it's the same template as that. It's the same with the.
I
would
the other totally agree. Yeah, and I hadn't thought about it that way, but that's correct. And the other thing too, and it kind of scares me a bit, Sean, is with the superhero movies. If you've got 5 or 6 superhero movies coming out a year, they're going to start to blend and look a lot like each other. Because there's only so many times you can put somebody in a costume and say, "Go stop the guy who's mustache twirling and wants to send a Blu-ray and then do this thing out of the sky and kill everybody." You can only do that so many times, right? Unless you put something interesting there. So I'm worried with the superhero genre. If you're putting out 5 or 6 of these a year, and if your third acts are weak, and then you've got pseudo interference trying to push you down a certain lane, it concerns me for the craft and how well these movies can be made. And then if you take the best villains, I think it was a mistake for XMen to go to Apocalypse already, because he's one of the most powerful villains that they have, but you kind of already used him. So what happens next? And then once you bring out, I guess in the Infinity Wars, once you bring out Thanos, what's the next big threat if you're going to keep these movies going on and on and on and on? And so at some point you're going to start rebooting them, and you'll have a new Iron Man's, a new Captain America. So I'm just wondering, and I'm a little concerned because of the rate of how many of these movies keep coming out a year.
Well, that's where even to that point of, you watch the first XMen movie, and the big climax of the finale is they're at the Statue of Liberty, and there's like a little beam trying to make some people have mutant powers.
Yeah.
And so the threat is that 30 people get mutant powers. And people really like that movie. Like, people loved that movie at the time. It was like, wow, look, a comic book movie that's not Batman that's really good. And you watch it now and it's like, oh, that's so quaint. So much so that it's like, so then you watch Apocalypse and it's like, the world will be destroyed. I am the Apocalypse. I will start over with better, with mutants. We are what's next. All of mankind will die. Whoa! We have escalated. How can you get bigger than this? Yeah. Oh, the MCU's got you topped. Thanos is taking on the galaxy.
Yes, all of it apparently.
And to say now, it's to some extent. Now we are kind of almost 20 years into this current era of movies, so that the fact that we're getting to the universe galactic battle, fair enough. Like, eventually it happens, and it's very comic booky, especially Marvel comic booky to have some. So being able to see that's a very cool thing that we're getting to see it. The problem is that they don't know how to make the non-gigantic blockbuster.
Yeah.
Or not that they don't know how to, they're afraid to.
Yeah.
And so then the fight to get Deadpool made, like, looking back on it, it just seems stupid. Like, why did it take so long? Why were you so afraid of making Deadpool? Yeah. And then it becomes maybe one of the most profitable movies, because it made just as much as any of these other movies, but cost a fraction of what the other ones cost.
Absolutely.
And then they're like afraid of making ones like that. I just think to myself, how much money they could make if they made a Batman movie for $60 million. Batman does not need... That's a
solid point.
Batman he's the great detective.
Yeah.
You don't have to have the city at stake and bombs and explosions. You don't have to have all that. He's a guy in a suit that isn't supposed to be a robot suit. He's not supposed to look like RoboCop. And he runs around in the dark, capturing bad guys and using his brain to solve problems.
Yes.
You can make that movie cheap.
Yes.
The Matrix was made for $60 million. Long time ago, so let's put inflation into that. The Matrix was made for the equivalent of about $100 million. You make a Batman movie for that amount of money. Think of what you can do. If you don't put the restriction on, we gotta have big budget spectacle. Yes. You take that requirement off of Batman, you've got the best Batman movie we've ever gotten.
That's absolutely correct. And when I think about George Lucas, right? So he was capped when he did the first Star Wars movie in '77. But what did that do? That made him become super creative because he didn't have the budget to do stuff. And he ends up making Star Wars a movie that now has been copied, duplicated, is in our iconography of language. We were always using quotes from the stuff that he created. But what made him more creative was the fact that he didn't have the budget and he didn't have effects at the level that they are now. So when you look at it from that perspective, you go, man, look at that. Look at what he was able to do with not half the stuff that people have now. So it's almost like today, there's no excuse. If you have this big a budget to not come in and tell us a good, compelling story to make this work. Look what this guy did with hardly nothing. Right. And now it's getting so bloated. The other thing is with people torrenting films now, if you're putting out a bunch of the same kinds of movies, that will make people not going to go. And then, of course, it gets more expensive. And then there's people that are on their phones and talking during the movies. What happens when you price yourself out of the market now and people are going to watch them at home? That is something that concerns me too.
Right. When you just think that almost everyone has a large TV that has incredible picture quality. So the cinema is cheapened, which was probably what ties into how do we make a big cinematic experience? You got to have it big, loud. You got to see it on a big screen. It's got to take full advantage of it. But all of our TVs look incredible. Like, I find that my TV in my bedroom looks better than most movie theater screens because it just looks incredible all the time, and it's big, and it's disproportionately large for my bedroom, and so it looks stunning. In some movie theaters, they dim it a little bit to save the
4K working.
I don't even have 4K yet.
And imagine if you had 4K, it would even be crazier. Right?
And so, and if you go back, when I watch like DVDs now, I'm like, oh man, how did I watch this before? And I think to myself, whenever I first, before I got my first Blu-ray player, I remember thinking to myself, what's the point of getting a Blu-ray player? This looks incredible. Like, I thought that to myself, and now I look back at what that stuff looks like, and it's like, it's hard to watch. It's like my eyes are out of focus. And then even more so, what VHS looked like, what we were watching for so long. But so then the movie experience, it's like they're trying to we got to do 3D or whatever gimmick to get people to show up. People want to show up to a movie that's worth seeing and worth having a discussion about. Split. Yes. It's a movie that I don't think it's a great movie, but it's a movie that made you want to go see it in the theater.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of Shyamalan, his old stuff, if you're a fan of this genre, you want to go see it. McAvoy, talk about his performance. You want to join the conversation, and to do that, you have to have a unique cinematic experience. And so that's what made Avatar work, because you were just talking about the amazing visuals. That's what made like some of the stuff with the MCU worked really well, when you're like, Matrix. Fuck the Matrix, you got to go see it. But when it's like, okay, another movie with the sky beam, garbage flying over the city and every building getting blown up, there's no conversation to be had.
That's exactly right. And that's one of the things I thought that Civil War got right, because what they could have easily have done in Civil War, spoiler alert, was just had those other 5 Winter Soldiers get free, and then have the 5 Winter Soldiers fight our heroes. But that would have been so predictable. I like the fact that movie wasn't about the world going to end.
The
so they're trying to stop
stakes are so small,
yes.
and the spectacle seems quaint compared to the 2 Avengers movies.
Yes, and I like the idea that you saw the intelligence of it, because when Black Panther sees Zemo, he tells him, he's like, nah. He goes, the living aren't done with you yet. When Zemo's like, well, I've done everything I needed to do, and now I'm going to try to take my own life. And he stops him, and he says, no. And even before that, he says, I see them, all looking for revenge. I will not be consumed by revenge like they are. And he makes a turn. You actually see a character arc in both him and Tony Stark. Tony Stark makes a character arc. And I'm like, wow, this is kind of serious for a superhero movie, because usually they would just say, hey, let's just go punch each other to death and knock each other through buildings and call it a wrap. That's Avengers 2.5. But I actually like the idea that Civil War at least tried to do something different this past year.
Right. So with that said, that's a great discussion about movies in general, but we don't want to just talk about it. How about you guys chime in below if you have any questions? Also, we're actually probably going to go a little bit long, so I don't know if I'll take too much Q&A at the very end. But if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them down in there. And so if I have time to join it, like I said, since we're actually talking, we can both talk quite a bit. We're going a little bit long. With that in mind, next thing I wanted to talk about with you, and what we were just talking about, actually what kind of drove the topics we want to talk about here, is we were just sitting at my kitchen table talking about movies. And
the best conversations happen at kitchen tables.
Yes, it's true. And so we just let's take that kitchen table conversation, put a camera in front of us, a microphone in front of us, start having it. So we weren't just talking about movies in general, but one of the ones we just naturally gravitated towards, since we're both on YouTube, we both like to talk about movies, is just the nature of the fanboy conversations, the reaction to critics, the nature of critics, all that kind of fun stuff that we interact with as people on YouTube that want to talk about it. We're a part of it.
Yeah.
So what are your first thoughts on the state of YouTube movie fanboyism?
It's incredible that we want to be so divided on everything, and it's okay to have a difference of opinion. I think that's wonderful. But it's when people frame it in such harsh terms, like, well, if you don't believe that this is the best movie, then you're an idiot and you're a moron and everybody should dislike your channel right now. It's kind of like, wait a minute, we're all for the free discussion. That's what this is about. YouTube's just another way to communicate, right? Without being there in front of you. So the idea that fanboys have to, when you make a statement, the fact that someone's already judging you as either Marvel fanboy or DC fanboy, or you're an old trilogy Star Wars fan versus a prequel. I mean, it seems like there's all these divisions that we keep getting in. It's like, look, guys, we just love movies. Can we just talk to each other with a certain civility without having to get ugly? You can disagree without being ugly,
right?
But I don't know. What
so like for me, when I first started out on my channel, what I wanted to do for a little bit was read mean comments. Just kind of from time to time read mean comments.
They probably get more hits.
And so then I did one video of that, and then started collecting more and more of them. And what I realized is I couldn't read them because they were just so negative, inflammatory, just violent, angry. Like, I'm going to kill you. And
violence? Really?
And stuff like, I just want to punch this guy in the face. If I ran into you on the street. And stuff that I was like, this is kind of funny, but it's weird to read it. Like, it's weird to even bring it up because the joke's gone. It's not just like someone, oh man, this guy's so stupid, he doesn't even know what to do. It's not that. It's actually like toxic, bizarre stuff. In particular, on trailer reactions are the ones I know that normally get the worst on it, because they get a lot of views, and it's fans of that trailer or that property. They come in and just storm in with very strong opinions. And so I did one on Power Rangers, and I'm not so old that
anything bad about Power Rangers, dude.
I'm not so old that I never watched Power Rangers. I'm old enough that I only watched this much Power Rangers, and then I look. But even then, I was like, "What is this weird campy show that's reused footage from Japan with people in rubber suits?" And you can see the zipper. And so then said many things that were not so good about it. And people were like, "You don't understand the lore. If you don't understood how great the lore is," like, there's no way the lore is good. This is a weird, campy TV show, and if you like it, that's fine. We all have things we have nostalgic ties to from our childhood, and things that we think are amazing and awesome, and they were for a 10-year-old in 1990, a 10-year-old in 1980, 14-year-old in 92. I mean, at some point in time in our life, they were amazing. They're just not actually, universally speaking, great storytelling. Power Rangers would be one of those things. The one that where it got the most angriest, crazy stuff was the two would Transformers, the new trailer for that one. My reaction to it, I was like, I don't even know how to respond to this trailer because it's like this serious, somber tone. I know when I watched this, Michael Bay, The Last Night, and it involves King Arthur and Nazis. And so then, and it's still directed by Michael Bay, and you watch the trailer and it's dead serious, and there's like a dragon transformer flies across the street, and then you see like a Nazi flag blowing in the wind, and it's, there are times where we are challenged, where we're pushed to our extreme, and then it cuts to someone saying, I'm never going to give... I mean, it's stuff like that. Just cheesy, over-the-top, overly serious. And you know when you watch this Michael Bay movie, there's going to be balls jokes, and there's going to be like the shot of the girl leaning over the car, and it zooms in on her butt. Like, you know all that's coming, and so this trailer's like it's a gimmick. So I trashed the trailer for that reason. People, you don't understand, this Grimlock's from this, and if you actually check out this TV show, you would know this. And I was like, and look at his eyes change color. That's why he... Like, I'm not saying any of that. The previous movies are not good. They have spectacle. If you enjoy the spectacle of seeing robots fight each other, I'm not blaming you. I like all these weird, dumb action movies from 25 years ago. Love those ones. Can't really defend them as great cinema. You're attempting to defend CGI schlock as good cinema. It's not. Hate, comment, just... You don't get it. You don't get it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's just an intellectual property. They're only doing this particular thing because it's making money and it's something that they know people will go see because they've at least heard of it. It's easier to market something that you've heard of than something that you haven't. So everybody doesn't have to be a fan of everything because I'm with you on that too. I'm not a big fan of the Fast and the Furious franchise. I just don't find it very intriguing to me. I actually don't care about the Transformers really that much either, or the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Well, how dare you take on this?
And then all of a sudden, but I think the worst that I got, the vitriol I got, was from the Suicide Squad, which I gave a very even, I guess, review of. And there was a guy who wrote me literally pages and pages and pages of a book on why I was dumb for not seeing the finer points of Suicide Squad. And I'm all like this, hey, if you have a different view from me, cool. You just have a different view, a different perspective. I don't think that has anything to do with anyone's intelligence or lack thereof. So I just think it's funny that people take these things personal. It's like you didn't even get paid. You're defending a movie that you didn't get nary a check for. And you're making it out like you have to defend it with your whole life just because it's something you grew up with.
And writing off on criticism.
It's like, come on, man. You didn't... It's like when people do this with sports. They get so angry when their team loses and they do all this stuff. And it's like, hey, I'm over it. They lost. I'm over it. There's always next season. They're not paying me any money, so they're not paying me to stress about it. So why am I going to stress about it? So it's okay to... It's not personal when people say something about a product. It's just their own perspective. And just relax, folks. There's already enough stress out there. Just relax. It's okay. It's okay.
That's specifically there's been so much on DC movies. All the guys I talked to that have done anything where they've been kind of critical of the DCEU have had someone show up, or multiple people, or some of us have like the same guy that keeps kind of showing up, and and it's just blind fanboyism because it's... So the big thing that a bunch of us keep bringing up is that what is Warner Brothers doing? Because they keep announcing, we're going to do 2 Shazam movies. That we're going to do a Green Lantern Corps movie. Oh, by the way, we don't have a director for The Flash. We've gone through 3 of them. We're doing a page 1 rewrite. But everything's good. Ben Affleck is going to direct the Batman. And by that we mean actually he's dropping out. We're not sure if the script is good. Matt Reeves may or may not be directing it. And, we do have a script. Next day we don't have a script. Everyone loves the script. And... so like for me, I just see all that and I go, having worked in a place where you make announcements and plan things and try and get people excited about it, this is exactly what you don't do.
Yeah.
And you work in at a church that have 200, 300 people at it. We put more thought into communicating things, promoting things, and making sure that we're not giving bad information, not leaking bad information. Like, all right, let's keep this under control. And when we have to announce something bad, be intentional in how we communicate it. But you're watching these fanboys show up and they're like, "You're just a hater. You're paid off by Marvel. You just love Marvel." I prefer the DC characters to the Marvel characters.
DC.
All the way across the board, they have better heroes and they have better villains, and just the inherent nature of the way more archetypes than kind of what Marvel does across the board.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would say that from a comic book perspective, a lot of my comic book friends would say that the DC stories they think are even better
the stories are better,
That's what they
far
would say.
more memorable stories. Like you talk about this one where Spider-Man got married and don't care at all. I'm much more interested in Batman's back getting broken because Bane figured out the code to how to beat him is to wear him down. Like, that's much more interesting to me.
Absolutely. And that one where Batman has to go and murk out all the Justice League, I'm forgetting, it's based off the Tower of Babel.
Tower of Babel is what it's called, yeah.
Yeah, and that one was a phenomenal comic book from DC. So it's interesting to see how these translate. And you see Marvel has just figured it out.
Yeah, they're making great entertainment products.
Yeah, and of course they have some stinkers too, but for the most part, they figured it out. And now the question is, well, what do you do now once you've done this and you've brought Thanos out, your biggest villain ever? It'll be interesting to see how they handle that, and maybe we'll get to see something else new. But until then, yeah, I don't get it. But to your point, I guess when people get too, overzealous about a particular film, just understand they're not attacking you. We're just talking about the product, and the product is just what it is. And people have a fair shot of it. You can't do the same thing with Star Wars films. You cannot attack The Force Awakens without people jumping all over you. You cannot attack the old trilogy, the OT, without the same thing, and even the prequels without somebody attacking. Yeah. So it's just interesting to see how it happens. But relax, folks.
Right. Well, that's so like on the Star Wars, put out a video where I ranked all the Star Wars movies when Rogue One came out.
Yeah.
And half the people that put out lists ranking it were very similar to mine in that the top 3 are the original trilogy, the middle section is the new ones, and then the prequels are at the bottom.
Yeah.
Half the people have some version of that.
Right.
And then the other half, it's just like a grab bag of whatever. And most of those people, when they shared their opinion, they either apologize preemptively thinking someone's going to come at, they're going to attack me. So sorry guys, I just really like The Force Awakens. It's new, and so I just connect with it a lot better. Sorry, I don't want to make anyone mad. Or the other side to it, other people coming in like, if you think that The Force Awakens is good, you're a moron that just likes to watch CGI spectacle on the screen. You don't like story. You don't like creativity. That's the least original movie ever made. It's awful, and you're a moron.
Yeah.
And that... side by side. Force Awakens is the worst movie ever made for over $100 million.
Yeah.
What?
So there's this thing about overstating things, and it's like, you can make your point without having to overstate it. And you know what? When you're in the room with other opinions, it's great because you'll learn more actually when you hear other people talk about it rather than attack. Because I think one of the things I had is I wasn't a fan of Kylo Ren. I just wasn't. I thought he was set up beautifully in the beginning. But the longer you
sounds like you're insulting all millennials right now.
Yes, and then that's what I'll get. I'm like, you're just wrong, and it's like, no, I'm just telling you my own personal preference, which is based off of my worldview and my world lens of what I've seen as I've grown up, and that should be okay, right? Because we all kind of have to live here together. We're all in the same big boat, so yeah, it's amazing to see that people get that caught up in a particular IP or intellectual property. When they're not even getting paid. Like, if you're getting paid to defend the company, or you work for the company and somebody's thrashing it, but the boss is different, the boss is a good man, yeah, I can see that. But if you're not, you're just someone who's going to see a film.
Yeah, and just some closing thoughts. I think the thing that's frustrating is that it kind of mirrors most of what's going on kind of in society in general, of like, everything's left, right, everything's good, bad.